we've been getting into here recently with our good friend, the good doctor here, marriage, okay, and marriages that are in trouble. They're a thing, and if your marriage is fading, you may know it. You may well know it, but you say, what can I do? I have hope, but what can I do? Well, the hope is a good thing, and you can build from there, says the doctor who joins us now, Dr. John Braccio with Regional Psychological Services of East Lansing, and the podcast always online, all the podcasts on good mental health at drjohnb.com. Good morning, sir, and welcome.
Well, good morning to you, Dave, and this is a good day to be talking after Memorial Day, which is such a huge day in our, our history and in terms of our celebrating those that went before us to defend our liberty and our lifestyle. So just to point on that. In terms of marriage, okay, well, often you're right. We often talk about marriages that are ending, okay, well, unfortunately. But in terms of fading marriages, these are ones we don't often talk about. And if a person has a fading marriage or relationship, there are things to look for hope, okay? If you have some hope, yes, I believe this can work, then that's a good sign. That means, yes, there is a way to save this marriage, okay, and there's a way if there are certain signs. And these are the signs, and if you have these, okay, you have mutually loved and respected friends and family you desire to keep. You want to keep these relationships in place. You genuinely care for each other's well-being. There really is genuine caring, okay? You respect and admire the better traits of your spouse. You desire to save the marriage with hard effort on both sides. You do not have walls of indifference, anger, frustration, and disagreement singly or in some combination that are so deep and thick that you can't bit by bit tear them down. You desire to continue a life together with some combination of children, grandchildren, family, and friends. You have no desire to see another person loving or sharing love with your spouse. You use humor, not bitter sarcasm, and that's very important. You have a strong desire to create wonderful memories like those you've had in the past. You desire to rediscover compromise and active listening that often is lost in fading marriages. You recognize what you have done and not done to enhance the marriage or relationship, and you share a willingness to seek out professional support as may be needed. So some combination of those, and if you're willing to work on them, those are signs that, yes, this relationship, this marriage can be saved, and they're positive. Those are the positive things.
It's interesting because as you were rolling through those, and I'm listening, trying to actively listen, and I'm carefully listening to those, it's dawning on me. I mean, even if you don't have a fading marriage, how many of those boxes still need to be checked? It is true, and if you do have all those checked, I would think, like you say, not only is there hope, but there may be a bright future for your marriage.
Yes.
If indeed you're checking those. Something may have come. How often do you see it where something's come up that you don't think is like, this isn't a systemic issue with this marriage? It doesn't cut to the core. It's something that is more or less a speed bump in the road, but this couple will get around it, and I can feel that because of XYZ. That happens too, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Fortunately, I've done a lot of marital work where people, they want to save it. They just don't quite know how. They're kind of stuck. Okay, they've hit a speed bump, and there could be something that's happened, like someone wants to make a major change in a career, or someone realizes they've been taken for granted. Okay, they haven't been sharing, they haven't been communicating. These things happen. There's still love, there's still caring. They're not. They can use humor and not bitter remarks all the time to make anger, and they just want some help to put things together, and that's important in life to have support. And it can be family, it can be your priest, your minister, it can be friends, or it can be a therapist. So yes, I do see that. Fortunately, otherwise it'd be pretty dismal if any time I worked with a couple that it was over. That happens many times. However. Sure. There are those that there is a desire to save it, because when you really think about it, ending a relationship, if you have children, is generally going to be destructive to some degree, barring some horrible sets of behaviors among the parents or the treatment of children or the spouse as a whole, if there's a desire to save things and there's still love and caring there, even if it's hidden by some walls of acrimony and anger, then there is hope. There is hope, and that is a positive thing, and that's one of the things I like, because I really enjoy being able to help keep people stay together, because there's so much to share, and you don't run into all the conflicts of his kids, my kids, their kids, anger, separate friends, new friends. I mean, it makes life very, very complicated if we dissolve something that was made in love and the desire was it was to work permanently. And if there are, even if they're just embers ready to be, worked with, then
that's something. It is something to work with. You've got something you've got something to try to help billow there and cultivate again. But let me ask you this. I mean, if I ever find somebody who I think is honest and they say, well, my marriage, everything's always been 50-50, I'm going to write a book about them and make a movie, okay? Because I don't think it is. I think on every given day it's 60-40, it's 75-25, it's 49-51. You know what I'm saying. Everything, there's an ebb and flow. But do you ever find a spouse here that says, I really think that our marriage can be saved, and here's why, and they start, and the other one is like, I don't know. I mean, because that could be problematic, couldn't it? You've got to both, don't you both have to have the same desire, or it just isn't going to work out? One may have more hope than another.
Yes, it takes two to tango, okay, there's no question. I do believe that if someone really feels they're being treated unfairly, and let's assume for a moment they are, okay, or you could make the argument, then that person may question more if the relationship can be saved, okay? But if both persons come in with the desire to honestly look at things and to work on things, then yes, a relationship can be saved. But there are also, I have another way of looking at this, Dave. I think successful relationships are based on spheres of influence. And what I mean by that is, if people compete and argue over everything, then that's a very bad way to live a relationship. Often people will have spheres of influence. Somebody will control inside the house. Somebody will control outside the house. Somebody is more in control of vacations. Somebody's more in control of finances. Someone's more in control of children, or they separate responsibilities. It's kind of you'll find.
You are absolutely right. You are 100% right on this. You are bang on with this. It's absolutely no one ever splits everything 50-50.
No, it's impossible.
My wife will tell you there's things that she does way better than I, and there's things I do that she would have no interest in trying to. Glad I do them, Going to clear out that wasp nest? Okay, that's yours, baby, not me. She would tell you that. I mean, it absolutely spot on. Spot on.
I believe that's something people don't think about, but you will find that people that get along, they often have worked in their relationships areas, and one has a control. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't areas they can debate and argue. That's not what I mean. But generally speaking, that is how successful relationships work. They divvy things up. They work as a team, but they don't compete. See, if you're in a relationship where you're fighting all the time over anything and everything, okay, then that means you really have a lot of work to do. And if you can't resolve that, then that relationship is either going to be miserable or it's going to be one that can change. It can change, but people have to be willing to, first of all, recognize that they're fighting over everything. I remember countless years ago, many, many years ago, a couple that one wanted a boat and one wanted an addition to a house, and they couldn't make a decision. So the final decision, they divorced, and he got a boat, and she got the addition to the house. I mean, it sounds ridiculous.
Okay. It does sound ridiculous to me.
Well, it does sound, but there are people, there are things that are so important to a person that they won't budge. And if you can't deal with active listening, like you're really listening to understand, you're not willing to compromise. But the key thing is that I find if people still say they care for each other, and they have humor. They can laugh at each other. When I hear that biting sarcasm, oh really, and it's deep embedded, boy, it's hard to get that out. Those walls have really gone up. But when there's people that really want to save things, like, yes, we can do this. You know, we on given days may be so angry, frustrated, but there is that love in there, and the idea of you being with someone else. That is not what I want. And we have our friends together, we have family together, we have children together, we have relationships together. Those are relationships that can be saved, and there are a lot of those. There are a lot of those out there. Unfortunately, too often people wait until the walls are so thick or they moved so far in different directions that they don't even know each other or barely know each other. So it's pretty
Makes
important
sense.
to
And by the way,
folks.
Okay. By the way, folks out there, if your boat is more important to you than your spouse, or your 3-season room that you want is more important than your spouse, then you might not be intended to stay together. I think I'd have to agree with them on that one, because you've got to have some give and take. If you don't, it's sayonara. It's bye-bye. When you know that you're in a fading marriage, but you have hope, and the other person does too, you do have real hope. The good doctor is Dr. John Braccio. He's at Regional Psychological Services in East Lansing, and the podcast will be very shortly at drjohnb.com. Always good to talk to you, Doc. It's another summer that we're heading into now. One of my favorite, it is my favorite season, and I think it's high on your list as well. And we'll enjoy talking to you next week, sir. All right.
Okay, my friend. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Doc. All right. We'll be back in a few moments. Don't go away. The Morning Wake Up, 1320. This is WILS.